Hi boys and girls, happy Sabbath. I'm so glad you're with me today. Do you guys look forward to these videos each week as much as I do? I really enjoy hearing the stories and the songs that we have each week. And I think you're going to especially like this week. This week, we're going to talk about how amazing God is. Do you know God is in charge of the whole world? But He also takes care of us every day, each of us individually, right? And our families too. So I'm looking forward to the stories today that show how God is taking care of us and how He's in charge of the whole world. But before we do that, can you guys bow your heads with me and let's have prayer, okay? Dear Jesus, thank you so much for our Sabbath today. Thank you that we're together. Watch over our friends that are watching from wherever they're at in their homes around the world, Father. Watch over and bless them. Thank you for taking care of us every day, and thank you for being in charge of all the things in the world. We love you, Jesus. Amen. Now the press children have our first song for this morning, and it's a song I enjoy singing every Sabbath. So I hope you guys will sit up real tall and start singing with them.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you. How are you today? Good morning to you. Good morning to you. This happy Sabbath day.
Oh, thank you so much for that song. And it really is a good morning, isn't it? And Teacher Lana, she has our kindergarten story ready for us, and I think it's going to make it an even better morning. It's a story about an angry king and a God who takes care of his children. So I want you guys to listen really careful because I'm going to have some questions for you when it's over. Are you ready?
I'm so glad you joined me again for our Bible study this week. We have an amazing story about people that served God. And that's our memory verse for this week. It's found in Joshua 25:14. And it says, "We will serve the Lord." Now I want you to listen to the story very carefully. And at the end, I want you to see if you can tell who showed God they loved Him by serving Him. Do you remember last week our story was about King Nebuchadnezzar? And King Nebuchadnezzar had a very, very strange dream. In this dream, he saw an image. And this image had a head of gold, a chest of silver, a stomach of bronze, legs of iron, and feet that were all mixed up of iron and clay. And he thought, this is a strange dream. The gods must be telling me something. And while he was watching that image, a great big rock came out and it hit the feet and it knocked the whole image down. And King Nebuchadnezzar woke up and he says, I'm sure the gods are telling me something. And he sent for all of his wise men and he says, I want you to tell me what my dream means. But the wise men couldn't do that. The wise men didn't know what Nebuchadnezzar's dream meant. And Nebuchadnezzar was very unhappy because he was sure it was something very, very important. But there was one person that could tell him. Do you know who that was? That was Daniel. And Daniel says, God is trying to tell you what's going to happen from now till the end of the world, till He comes again. Oh, King Nebuchadnezzar was so excited that God had talked to him in the dream, and Daniel was able to tell him what the dream meant. Then for a little while, he served God. But the other wise men were really, really unhappy. They didn't like it that Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had more power than they did. So they would get together and they'd say, we have to do something. We have to watch and see if we can do something so the king won't like them anymore. So one day they said, I know what let's do. Let's go talk to the king and let's tell him our idea. And they were so excited they went before the king. And they said, oh, King, live forever. Do you know what? It seems like every time when a Bible story starts out like that, somebody's not going to be honest and somebody's going to be in trouble. And you know what? They told King Nebuchadnezzar, they said, do you remember the dream you had? King Nebuchadnezzar said, yes, I do. I remember the gold head and the silver chest. And this wise man says, I think you need to build an image that looks just exactly like that. But instead of it being all different colors, I think you need to make the whole image that's gold. And that way, everybody is going to know how important your kingdom is and that your kingdom is going to last forever and ever and ever. And you know, they watched King Nebuchadnezzar carefully, and he started to smile, and he says, that's a wonderful idea. Send for all the craftsmen and send for the people that take my treasury, and Take all of the gold out and you have them build this statue. So the wise men sent for the people in charge of the treasury, and they sent for craftsmen that made idols, and soon they were all working very, very hard on this great, big, huge idol. And this wasn't going to be just a tiny idol. This idol, from toes to the top of its head, was 90 feet tall. And from this one shoulder to the other was 9 feet wide. That was a huge idol. And it was so big, they didn't know where to put it up. And then the king says, I know where we can put it. Let's put it on the plains of Dura, because the plains of Dura are very flat, and there's just a few hills in the background, but people could see the idol from a long, long ways away. And the wise men were really excited about that. They said, that's the perfect place. So soon the idol was all done, and it was standing on the plains of Dura. And the king called the scribe, and he says, I want you to make a law, a decree, and I want you to tell everybody in my kingdom that they have to come and worship my idol. So the scribes wrote out the decree, and they sent it out to everybody in the kingdom. And before long, that special day was here. And the king went out to the plains of Dura. Oh, he loved the look of that idol. It was so big, and it was so amazing. And his wise men went out there with him. And you know who else was with him? There were soldiers. Can you see my soldiers? Oh, and there were lots and lots of soldiers. And there were lots of people. There was more and more and more people came. There were grandpas and grandmas and moms and dads. And there were boys and girls, and there was lots and lots of people out there. And then do you know who else was out there? There were musicians. And these musicians had trumpets. And the king had told them that when the trumpets played, everybody had to bow down to his idol. You know what? Everybody sat, and they waited, and they watched. And the king signaled for the trumpeters to play. And the trumpeters played really loud, and everybody bowed down to the idol. King Nebuchadnezzar was so excited that all of these people were worshiping him. But you know what? His wise man says, wait a minute. Not everybody is bowing down. There are 3 men that are standing in the middle of all of these people, and they are not bowing down. And the king sent his soldiers, and he says, you get those men really quick. And they went over, and they got Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they brought him to the king. And the king says, didn't you hear the music? Didn't you know that when the music played, you were supposed to bow down? And you know what they said? They said, we knew, king, but we cannot worship you. We only worship the God in heaven. You know what? That made King Nebuchadnezzar really, really mad. He says, I'll give you one more chance, and you have to bow down. But you know what they said? They said, it doesn't matter. You don't have to give us one more chance. You don't have to give us 100 chances. We will never, ever worship you or your idol. We only worship the God in heaven. And now King Nebuchadnezzar's face got all red, and he was so angry. He pointed to his furnace that he had up there, and he told the soldiers, he says, throw more wood in that furnace. Get it 7 times hotter. Do you know, I don't know how they did that, because we have a fireplace at home, and we can throw wood in it, and we can get it pretty hot. But I don't know how to get it 7 times hotter. But the soldiers threw the wood in, and the king says, okay, now take Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and tie their hands up and tie their feet up. But leave their clothes on, because their clothes are going to catch on fire really, really quick, and they'll burn faster. And they got them all tied up. And they said, okay, now throw them into the furnace. And the soldiers went up, and they threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fire. And you know, the fire was so hot that the soldiers fell over. They couldn't even stand the heat. And King Nebuchadnezzar was so excited. He goes, that will teach them. I know that there is no God that can save them. But you know what? Then he looked at the fire, and he talked to his wise men, and he says, wait a minute. How many people did we throw into the fire? And they said, you threw in 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He says, but look, there's 4 people in the fire. 1, 2, 3, 4. and their hands aren't tied, and their robes aren't on fire, and they're just walking around. And the fourth one looks like the Son of God. And he called to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he says, "Come out quickly." And you know what? They stepped out of the fire, and the ropes were all off their hands. And it was so amazing. Their clothes didn't even smell of fire at all. And they went over to the king and they said, "Our God has been able to save us." And the king was so excited. He says, "Now everybody has to worship the God of heaven because he's the only one true God." Now, what was our memory verse? Joshua 25:14. We will serve the Lord. Now, can you think of who served God in this? Was it the soldiers? Did they serve God? No. What about all the people that bowed down to the idol? Did they serve God? They didn't either. What about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Did they serve God? They did. And because they served God, they were able to tell all the other people that God was the only true God and that God loved them. I am so glad we got to do this story, and I want to be just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I want to serve God every day of my life. And you know, I don't have to go into the fiery furnace to serve God. I can serve God by being kind to my friends and obeying when mom and dad ask me to do something. Every time we are kind and we're loving and we help others, we are showing everybody that we serve God, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, I need you to say our memory verse again. Joshua 25:14. We will serve the Lord. Can you say that with me? Joshua 25:14. We will serve the Lord. I hope you remember this week that we want to be like Jesus every day.
Thank you for that story, Teacher Lana. And here's some of my questions. Do you think it was right for that king to ask the people to worship him? It wasn't, was it? We are supposed to only worship God. And I want to know, how many people did the king put in the fire? Can you count with me? There were 1, 2, 3, right? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But when the king looked in the fire, how many were there then? There was 1, 2, 3, 4. That was because Jesus was with them in the fire. And do you know what that tells me? It tells me that God is more important than any king or anyone else in the universe, and we should worship only him. And it also tells me that no matter what happens to us, Jesus and God are always with us. And for that, we can be really thankful, right? Because I think this next song by the Press Children, that's going to show us how mighty our God is. So listen really careful.
What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve.
Wow, what a mighty God we really do serve, don't we? And since our God is so mighty, we know that he wants the best for us. And if we know he wants the best for us, we should follow his directions, shouldn't we? And do what God asks us to do. But how do we know what God wants us to do? Well, we can read and listen to Bible stories. We can talk to God. We can go out and spend time in his nature. And do you know what? I think that's a reason God gave us parents too. Parents help us know what God wants us to do, and maybe our teachers and our pastors and our leaders. But Pastor Trey, he has a story about some men that did not want to listen to God's directions. And I don't think it turned out very well for them. And so we want to remember, let's listen to God and do what God knows is best, right? So listen really carefully while Pastor Trey has our primary Bible lesson for us.
Good morning, boys and girls, and happy Sabbath! Today's story is entitled God's Choice, and our memory verse comes from Revelation chapter 14, verse 7. It reads, "Worship him who made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and the springs of water." You know, God's choice story tells us about men who were grumbling against Moses. The story goes, there was trouble in the camp. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram were very upset. they did not think that Moses and Aaron should be only leaders in the camp. Korah also thought it unfair that only Aaron's family served as priests. What an interesting argument. Korah and other Levites worked in the tabernacle, but only Aaron's family were allowed to be priests. Okay, Kushi? I am a Levite, just like Aaron. Korah may have said, why can't my family have a chance to be priests too? Those are some of the thoughts that he might have had. The more he thought about it, the more unfair it seemed to be. But Korah, Dathan, and Abiram forgot something very important. What was that? Moses had not asked for the job of leading God's people. God had chosen him. Remember the story of Moses? Korah, Dathan, and Abiram soon found others who agreed with them. 250 other men joined the plot against Aaron and Moses. Together, they went to Moses and said, why do you set yourself above the Lord's people? Moses listened to them. He did what, Kushi?
Listen to them.
He did what, Kushi?
Listen.
He listened to them. Then he warned them. It is against the Lord that you and all your followers have banded together. But they wouldn't listen. These men refused to accept leaders that God had chosen. Just imagine, Kushi. They refused to follow the instructions God had given them. God wanted everyone to know that Moses was the leader that he had chosen. So what did God do? God made something happen that had never happened before. And Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and the 250 men were destroyed. They were what?
Destroy.
In other words, they were all killed. But that was not enough to stop the grumbling in the camp. Get a walking stick from the leaders of each of the 12 tribes of Israel. God told Moses, write the name of each leader on the stick from his tribe. Aaron's name was written on the stick from the tribe of Levi. God told Moses to place the 12 sticks in the tabernacle overnight. The stick belonging to the man I chose will sprout, said God. I will rid myself of this constant grumbling against you by the Israelites. Are we together, Kushi? In the morning, Moses and all the people went to the tabernacle. Went where?
To the tabernacle.
Yes, to the tabernacle where God dwelt. They wanted to see what had happened to the walking sticks. When Moses brought out Aaron's stick, everyone was surprised to see it had sprouted. It had budded, blossomed, and produced almonds. An old dead stick had come to life. When Moses showed the sticks to the Israelites, they realized God had indeed chosen Aaron. Moses and Aaron served under God's authority, and the people were finally willing to respect that. Moses put Aaron's walking stick in the ark in the tabernacle as a reminder to respect the authority of who? Of God. The authority of who, Kushi?
God.
The authority of God. And that Bible story reminds us to respect those God puts in authority over us. Wow, what an interesting story. Who wants to pray for us as we close? Pray, Kushi.
Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for our families. Thank you for everything that you made for us. Thank you for this wonderful day. Please stop the rain. Amen.
Amen.
In that story, who picked Moses to be the leader of the Israelites? That was God, right? Did anyone else have the right to change God's plans? No, they didn't, did they? Because God had the authority to make the plans and nobody had the authority to change them. And do you know what? We should obey God's authority because God knows what's best for us. And when we do that, do you know, I think that we'll be happier too. So right now, the Press family has another song for us that's going to remind us that God is taking care of us and that we should worship Him. Can you guys listen carefully to this song?
And we know that all things work together for good, work together for good, work together for good. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love the Lord, to them that love the Lord, to them that love the Lord. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love the Lord.
Oh, thank you for that song. And do you know what? We have one more story for you.
Good morning. What is worship? For Korah, Dathan, and Abihu, worship meant leading out in the tabernacle services. It was offering sacrifices to God, burning incense in the sanctuary, and leading the congregation in prayer. These are all aspects of worship, but worship is much more than these. Worship is something that begins in the heart. It is honoring God and obeying what He has determined is best for us to do. The prophet Micah asked the question, "What does the Lord require of you?" And the answer he gave was to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Now Korah and his associates wished to honor themselves more than to honor God, and for this they were rejected. So how should we worship? Jesus said to his disciples, "If you love me, keep my commandments." And then he told them, "I give you a new commandment. Love one another." So the basis of all worship is love. Love for God and love for other people. One day, when I was mowing the lawn and talking to God, you do know you can talk to God wherever you are and whatever you're doing, right? Yeah, okay. Well, I got this idea to ask God for a mission. You know, something that would make a difference in the world. Now, I was thinking something big, but God was thinking something more personal, something that would help me grow in faith and trust in Him. It was a humble task, but something that was very expressive of who God is. Very clearly, I heard a voice in my head say, "Love the ones you're with." Love the ones you're with. We honor and worship God when we lovingly care for the people God brings into our lives. This starts with our family, our parents and brothers and sisters, and then widens out to include all those who need a safe place where they can be loved and cared for. When my wife Judy and I decided to open our hearts to love God's children, God started bringing people into our lives. Now I want you to keep track of how many people God brought into our lives. And these are just a few of the people. Well, one day, Judy got a call from her sister Chris. Chris was going in for extended treatment, and she wanted Judy to take care of her 9-year-old daughter, Deanna. So Deanna came and stayed with us for several months. And then Chris came to stay with us also. We were their home and family for 20 months. So that's 2 people, right? And then my daughter contacted us and said she wanted to come and stay with us for a while. So she and her 2 children, ages 1 year and 6 years, came and stayed with us. They stayed with us for a year. Now, since my daughter was a nurse, she worked from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. So Grandpa, meaning me, had to get the kids up in the morning, get them dressed and fed, and off to school or daycare. And then I picked them up at night and fed them again, did baths and stories, and put them to bed. It was a lot of work, but also a great blessing. So that's 3 more people, right? And then when our daughter Bronwyn's family wanted to move to Kentucky for work, their oldest son, Anthony, our grandson, wanted to stay here and finish out his last year of high school with his friends. So Anthony moved in with us for his senior year of high school. The following year, we helped him move into his college dorm. 1 more, right? And then one summer, our friend Maureen called and said she was here at Andrews to study, but her living arrangements fell through. Could she come stay with us? So Maureen and her daughter Paige moved in with us for the summer and part of another summer, and they remain part of our extended family. That's 2 more, right? Then one day, our son Bryce called and said that his daughter Laura was having trouble with 3rd grade material. And the school, though, wanted to promote her anyway to the 4th grade. Could Laura come and stay with us and have Judy homeschool her until she bring her up to the appropriate grade level? So Laura came and stayed with us, and Judy worked with her with an online learning program, much like kids have done this past year with COVID. That's 1 more. And then when Bronwyn's family wanted to move back here from Kentucky, they needed a place to stay. Now at that time, we were looking to move to a different house. We were thinking a smaller house. But the Lord led us to a bigger house with a large unfinished 2nd story. Well, this house was way too big for just Judy and me. But if it were fixed up, it would provide a place for Bronwyn's family of 5. So we bought the house. Bronwyn's husband, Al, roughed in the rooms upstairs, and we subcontracted for plumbing and electrical. And we made the house into a duplex. And Al now maintains the yards and plows the driveway in the wintertime. And the house works out well for our now 4-generation home. But God is never finished. A few weeks ago, our granddaughter Tanya called and said she wanted to move to Michigan. Could she stay with us for a while until she got her own place? Of course, said Judy. When we open our hearts to God, He sends us people. Now, how many was that? The night count was 15. 15 people have come at various times to live with us. You see, you may not have to go away from home to love and worship God in this special way. But we should care about people outside the home. There's a great need in our community for people who care. One of the biggest needs is with foster care. Now, you may not be able to have a kid in your home, but there are other ways to help. God's Hands for Kids is a foster care support group that provides beds and bedding, clothes, furniture, and household goods for families taking in foster kids or for families getting reunited. We have many donors, but we need help with people who can sort and organize donations and pick up and deliver household goods, furniture, and bedding. Perhaps this is something your family would like to do. If so, you can find out more information at godshandsforkids.org or at our Facebook page. There are many ways to love and worship God, but I believe caring for God's children is the best form of worship. Happy Sabbath.
It made me think of our Bible story when the people wanted to be in charge instead of Moses, and that didn't work out well for them. And we need to remember that we don't have to be in charge, and we don't have to be the biggest leader to do work for God. We can do it no matter where God places us, and we can be a helper for Him. And when we listen to God and His authority, do you know we're actually worshiping God? And I think that is a really good thing to do. And I think if God can take care of the whole world, that He's able to take care of us. And because He can do that, I think that we can trust Him and his authority, don't you? Okay, now the press children are going to sing another song for us. See if you guys can get your hands ready to go like this, because we're going to talk about God taking care of the whole world.
He's got the whole world in his hands. 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 He's got everybody here in his hands. He's got everybody here in his hands. He's got everybody here in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands.
Since God is taking care of the whole world, do you know what? That makes him even more important than the king, like King Nebuchadnezzar, more important than Moses, who led the Israelites out of Egypt. Do you know what? God is the most important person, and he should be number one in our hearts, shouldn't he? And if you want to have God be number one in your heart, can you raise your hand with me? Because that's what I want. I want God to be number one in my heart. And if you're raising your hand, I know that God is smiling, and he's so happy that you want him to be number one in your heart too. And I see that our Sabbath school time is almost over. But before we go, the press children are going to sing one last song, and Abba is going to have prayer. So listen real careful, and then I will have one little message before we go.
Our Sabbath school is over and we are going now. Goodbye, goodbye, be always kind and true. Goodbye, goodbye, remember God loves you.
Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for everything you did for us. Now, thank you for the Sabbath you made for us. And please help those people who are dying out of Corona and keep everybody safe. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, it really is time to say goodbye now. But before we go, I want to remind the moms and dads that you can find more Sabbath School resources on Pioneer Memorial Church website, or if you're on Facebook, go to our Children's and Discipleship page and you'll find lots of interesting things there too. Well, I hope you guys have a good Sabbath, and we'll see you real soon. Bye.